All right, Marnie Glickman. It's Tuesday night. I'm outside, you're inside. I'm in Madison, you're in Portland. That covers that, right? Is there anything else to report?
Oregon is home to the biggest wildfire in the United States. Wow. And I've offered shelter to our classmate, Doug Robertson, who is still okay. But I might see him this weekend.
That's good. You know, you moved to Oregon to escape the wildfires, I thought.
Well, I did. And I am safer because I don't live on open space, but that's just a bore when we have these amazing guests, Jason.
Right, exactly. We get away from the weather quickly. Joining us from Apple Valley, Minnesota, Carl Anderson, and from Shippensburg, Pennsylvania is Brad Herman. Welcome to KHOP88, you guys.
Wow, thank you. I'm honored to be, on this KHOP broadcast, and I feel very geeky. I'm feeling 16, 17 years old again. I don't know. It's awesome.
Well, we should get right into that. I think that you brought it up to us in an email. You were attached to the video cameras of KHOP88 when you were in high school. Tell us about. Well, first of all, how did you get involved in KHOP, and what did you love about that experience when you were in high school?
So absolutely, yeah. I kind of joke that I was like if anybody can remember me, they probably remember a video camera here and a little red hair, and that's about it. A big giant. And by the way, in those days, it was like these humongous 80-pound cameras, and then we had a big battery pack thing. So I kind of walked around my high school years like this, most of the time. But no, I found an interest in kind of video and just being that kind of video geek guy when I was in junior high at North. And I remember my first job ever when I was 13 in the AV department was learning how to wrap cords. And very exciting. But to this day, I still wrap cords exactly the same way, So
the AV department at North?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, I, of course, went to North too. Let's start there. Like, what do you remember about AV at North?
Okay, my first memory of AV at North, besides wrapping cords, was they actually had a tape-to-tape recording machine with this really thick, like, they recorded on videotape in this reel-to-reel thing. And I couldn't believe it. It was black and white camera, horrible quality, but so cool, So I became the North Junior High video geek first, before the Hopkins High video geek. And I was the guy, if any of you can remember, watching movies in class. I came to set up your projector and run the movie for you, and then turn it off and return everything. And that's where I got my teeth cut on, but I was also the guy that got certified for the cable TV because the cameras were much better. So I would check out these giant, huge cameras, TV cameras from the cable TV, and then I would do these little movies. I was into Doctor Who back then. I do these little Doctor Who strange movies, and I would dress up like the Doctor and all this and that. Anyway, then I got to high school, and what happened is, my sophomore year, unfortunately, my parents moved to Brainerd, so I missed my sophomore year at Hopkins. So many of you watching this might not remember me because I was really only there at Hopkins High for my junior year. But I can say this, very, very special for me. I wandered into KHOP TV, and Dan Eckberg, Mr. Eckberg, took me under his wing. And he became like a father figure. He was like a major mentor in my life. Still to this day, I can say probably my most encouraging mentor ever. And at 16, that's what, a kid needs. You need someone that knows, that can see your potential and help you unlock it. And so we'll talk about what I'm doing now later, but the whole idea is the seeds were sown through Dan Eckberg and then the other students that I met. And I made a lot of terrible, productions there, but but it was so much fun. And I basically slept in the AV room. I think they set up a cot for me, and at night I would just not go home, and I don't know. But anyway, it was that's my backstory there.
That's fantastic. Brad, were you a part of these AV shenanigans, or did you meet Carl in another way?
You know, I wasn't. What I remember is we had a judo class that we took together. That's the one thing I remember is, and I'm trying to think of who taught that class.
Mr. Graff with
That's
two
who it
F's.
was. Yes,
I
it was
there.
Mr. Graff.
Mhm.
Yep. So we met in the judo class, and you know, we met through Dave Colley. If you remember Dave Colley on the swim team, and so we had, you know, mutual friends and such. But no, I wasn't involved in any of the video shenanigans.
But the judo class, Brad, that would have had to have been at North because we
That's
met.
what I meant. Yeah. I was at
Yeah,
North.
like at 8th grade, maybe 7th grade, somewhere in there. And you probably flipped me and, you know, nearly killed me and stuff. You know, I weighed like 50 pounds. I was like 50 pounds, super skinny, you know.
I was a small dude in junior high and high school. So
I just remember we you know, what's so fun about this invitation, Marnie and Jason, is, you know, Brad is probably my oldest friend, my oldest living friend, you know, one of my besties for sure. And, you know, we don't talk enough, right, Brad? But
true.
This is a great opportunity to hang out with you because Dave Colley introduced us to D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. And I was too, I don't know, geeky, or I was into Doctor Who, so you'd think I could figure this out, but I was never like the dungeon master mind where you could create this whole scenario and, you know, roll the dice and now the dragon is attacking, and I couldn't do any of that. But I just remember playing it, and Brad was there, and so that's kind of how we connected. We were just like these two D&D guys.
We were total geeks.
You know, you brought this up, but like some millennial staffers of mine have a regular D&D game today. I want to say it's back, but I sort of think that it never really went away, right? It's like
it's
people
kind of
discover it and rediscover it.
It's kind of become a little cooler, I think. You know, when I was in high school and junior high, you know, I was a big comic geek. You know, I had dyslexia, and so my dad tried to do anything he could to get me to read. And so he bought me comic books when I was, you know, like 10. And so I ended up working at Schindler's.
Oh yeah.
And when I was 20, I owned about 6,000 comic books.
Whoa.
And so, I was a big comic geek. Well, now it's like the cool kids in school that my kids are going to school with all love Marvel stuff. You know what I mean? It's hip now. Not so much at North or at Hopkins. So
we'll get to, I want to get to Schindler's in a bit, but was there like a D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, like under, you know, culture in the school? I mean, I played Dungeons and Dragons primarily at Boy Scout camp. And then I would let my character languish for a year or whatever, and then go back and play more. And I had neighbors who played. They were a little bit more active than I was. And a lot of guys, not many women at the time. A lot of guys I knew played. Did you have a regular game? Did you rotate houses? How did that all work?
We did. We played with Dave Colley. Now, I did a lot with Aaron Larson, Mike Holsather, Scott Stanfield.
Mike Holsather.
Yeah, Mike Holsather was part of it. Eric Kavalseth was part of our group with Aaron Larson. I would play a lot with Eric Kavalseth. And so just, you know, a bunch of different people playing, but you know, we had a regular gig going on.
Were these all night? Go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry.
Just saying, fun to hear all those names again. I remember each one as you say them, but it's been so many years since we've talked about him. So,
I mean, Mike Holsather was the Judd Nelson character in Breakfast Club. Earring, overcoat.
Yes.
You know, FU attitude.
I totally, like I'd be the blonde kid, right, in that, but I was so Mike Holsather like that, but yeah, I didn't fit in. Like the whole point with my high school career was like I just never felt like I could fit in with anybody, and this little group gave me, you know, a chance to do something that was kind of fun, and then with KHOP, then I really started to fit in from there. But I just remember all of our good looking classmates walking around, and all the jocks and everybody, and I'm just thinking, oh, why did I get stuck with like zits and red hair and, you know, a skinny little body and all of it? But now I'm like over that.
Yeah. It doesn't take that long to get over.
Remember Zitz? Let me ask you a follow-up about D&D. Have you guys played, when was the last time the two of you played D&D together?
Long.
It's been, you know, I think once we became Christians, you know, that was of the devil, so why play it, you know? But seriously, it's been, yeah, I think teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played in a very long time.
I'd play it again though. I would. I mean, I love the Lord of the Rings movies and all of it. Harry Potter, I've seen all of them, and I'd play it again. My son plays it now.
I think there's a creative nature to it that is really pretty cool. I mean, and you know, I mean, this is, I guess, maybe not a good thing, but you know, for a guy like me, you know, I was in high school. I didn't want to be in high school. I'll tell you a funny, quick story that.
Please.
I remember one day I was with Aaron Larson, and Aaron said, he said, by the end of senior year, everybody's going to know me by my face or by name. And I said, by the end of the senior year, no one's going to know me by face or by name. And it was like 3 years after I graduated. It might've been 4 years after graduating. I was working at Pizza Hut, just, you know, doing deliveries for Pizza Hut at night. And this guy standing next to me, and he says, hey, where'd you go to high school? I said, Hopkins. He goes, oh, that's where I went. And he goes, what year did you graduate? I said, 88. He goes, that's when I graduated. He looks at me and goes, I don't know you. And I'm like, yes.
We call it a self-fulfilling prophecy, Brad.
But the you know, part of the thing with D&D is you know, you get to become somebody else other than yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a creative process to that. It's sometimes kind of cool.
Well, I mean, there's the whole role-playing game thing has exploded when we were in high school, has continued to explode. You can play any number of different genre of strategy, you know, games that last for days and years and stuff. It's sort of easy to see why. I know there's a guy I know here in Madison who's basically built his entire career out of buying and selling magic cards. It's his job, you know. He owns a shop. It's his profession.
Yep.
So Carl, you went to Brainerd, back to Brainerd. Brad, well, I guess the story I'm looking for from both of you is, where did you go after high school, and how did you sort of develop your careers?
Okay, should I start, Brad?
Yeah, go ahead.
So after high school, I attended Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota. I came in as a transfer student, so I was already ahead of the game by about a year and a half. And surprisingly, I didn't do a lot with the Concordia video department. Just it was a little bit of an oil and water relationship there. I don't know why, but I did continue to run my wedding video business. So my senior year, actually, I finished at Brainerd, and a girl was a little ahead of me, and she said, yeah, I'm getting married. How much do you charge for a wedding video? And I said, I don't know. I had never shot one. So I said, how does $25 sound? She said, that sounds great. So yeah, so I did my first wedding video, actually, and that was prior to, yeah, that's interesting. That was the summer prior to my coming to KHOP. I started my own video business. And so all the way through KHOP training, and then all the way through Brainerd, and then through college years, I ran that video business and doing weddings. And I ended up doing a summer at USC Film School. It was really an amazing program. One fun story for you guys is I wanted to meet Steven Spielberg, right? I wanted to work for Steven Spielberg, so I had very low aspirations, you know. So I get to LA, but 6 months prior to going to LA, I wrote to him every week for 6 months, saying, "Hey, I'm coming to California. I'm gonna come. I want to come and tour Amblin Entertainment, where you know your studio at Universal, and I want to work for you." Well, long story short, I get a call when I'm out there at this USC school from his office, from a producer, a woman that runs his office. And she says, yeah, Stephen and I, we've been getting all your letters, and you're very persistent. Why don't you come in for an interview? So I was like, sweet. So I got to go into Amblin Entertainment. It's on the back lot at Universal. I had to get through 3 really big African-American security guards that were like really built. And I was like this little skinny video guy, you know. And they checked me in. I got in. She gave me a tour of the whole place. She says, Stephen apologizes. He actually got a last minute luncheon with George Lucas today, so he's unable to see you. I'm like, okay, I get it. Carl Anderson from KHOP88 or George Lucas, which one is he going to meet, you know? And anyway, they were hiring for the film Hook at the time, if you remember that movie with Robin Williams. And I unfortunately had to go back to finish school, so I didn't get on the film. And that was like my little brush with Spielberg. But I pursued video for a while. And then I actually then at age 20 became a Christian for the, you know, I bowed my knee to the Lord Jesus and just said, Lord, I just give you my life. And if you can use it for your glory, here I am. And that moment was really a revolutionary change for me, because I graduated then from college a few months later, again at age 20, with a bachelor's in communications. And then I moved to Los Angeles to try to pursue film. And while I was out there, I felt like the Lord kind of tugging on me to say, you know, Hollywood can wait. I have another course for you if you want to take it for your life. And so I came back to Minnesota, and I then entered the ministry, and that's a whole nother story, but that's how that happened.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, Brad, what was your what happened to you after Hopkins?
You know, I was a crazy mess. And
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing drugs I wasn't doing many drugs, but I wasn't, you know, my dad died when I was in 9th grade. And that really, you know, kicked my legs out from under me. And, you know, as I alluded before, I had dyslexia. So I had, you know, I was in special ed almost all the way through high school. So it's just hilarious that I'm doing what I do today for a living. But basically, I was a introvert. I was a jerk, you know, in a lot of ways. But I graduated from school and, you know, went off to Normandale just to keep doing something, you know. And ultimately, I dropped out of Normandale, and like Carl, I, you know, basically came to know the Lord Jesus Christ, and you know, changed my life, and I started doing a lot of soul searching, and that led up to that, a lot of the soul searching. I mean, I was going to Zen Buddhist temples. I was doing anything I could do to try to satiate this peace in my heart. And anyway, I converted and came to know the Lord. And during that time, I was doing, like Carl, I was doing ministry and different things. And ultimately, I moved to Colorado in '96. So I think I was 26 at the time. I moved to Colorado and went to school there and trained to be a pastor, and did that for, I'd already, you know, done pastoral ministry a little bit in Minneapolis and Shakopee, and in Minneapolis proper. But after doing it in Colorado for a little bit, it just wasn't my cup of tea working on staff at a church, and so I quit that. But I lived in Colorado for 18 years, and in that time, I started working for a publishing company. This was like in 1999. I started working for actually it was a ministry that had a publishing company, and I ran their publishing company for 4 years. And then they closed that down, and I bought their bookstore from them. So I owned a bookstore that had 2 locations, one in Denver and one in Colorado Springs. That was an adventure, because it, you know, did basically $500,000 the first year, and I got into all kinds of debt and learned all kinds of stuff. But anyway, today, you know, like I said, I work for a publishing company in Pennsylvania, and I still have an e-commerce business where I sell books, but books are my blood, and you know, it's what I get up every day is to create a book that'll change somebody's life. And by
Surprise!
As if on cue.
Well, look who's here.
That's awesome.
So Mike's still connecting here. But that's Karen Hintermeister usually logs on to remind us to ask you both about your family and kids or pets. What's all going on in your households?
Okay, well, I'll start there. Mike, you haven't changed a stitch. Your hair is exactly the same as I remember it.
Well, it's been a lot of water, man.
So,
Hi, Mike.
okay. Should I go first, Brad? on
Yeah,
that
go.
one?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm married 24 years to my wife, Sarah. We met, it's kind of a fun story, just quickly how we met, if you want to hear it.
Sure.
I was 26 and I felt like the Lord tell me this was the year I was going to get married. I was going to meet somebody and marry them in my 26th year. So I had a ministry newsletter back in that time. And Brad, you might have even been on my list. I'm not sure. You might have been. But we have a ministry, Born to Blaze, and all this. And I sent out this newsletter that says on the front, hey, I feel like I'm going to get married this year. So if any of you mothers have a daughter who's available, I'm open. And this is my year. So let's get this going.
Oh, man, you're so funny.
So I said in there, I said only two things. She has to love Jesus more than me, and she has to have roller skates on her feet. Meaning I'm traveling all the time. She's got to be able to flow with me. And that was a, symbol for that. Anyway, then I'm invited to preach at this church, and it's a vineyard church in Minneapolis here. And I knew the pastor. So I'm on my way in the church, and I actually had my hand on the door, and I prayed. And my prayer was, Lord, this is the kind of church I can meet myself a woman. Now, come on. There's got to be a woman in here for me. That was my prayer. And I go in the building, and then this woman, Sarah, is the greeter that night. So she greets me. There were no angel voices or anything. It was just, oh, this is nice. She's a nice, nice gal. And anyway, we developed friendship, and we got married 7 months to the day of meeting. So exactly 7 months later, we got married. And so 24 years later, she still tolerates me. I'm not sure why, but she does. And we have 3 kids. So we have 2 boys and a girl. Our sons are now 21 and 18, and our daughter is 16. And we have a dog named Tater. He's a little morky poo, so he looks like a little tater, like a tater tot. And let's see, my oldest son just graduated from University of Northwestern in St. Paul with a degree in business and marketing. My middle son is in the Army, so he's off right now in what's called AIT training in South Carolina for his job. He's potentially going to be deployed. We're not sure. And then my youngest daughter is now going to be a junior in high school.
Wow.
Fantastic. Brad, what's up?
So I've been married to my beautiful wife, Christine, for 22 years. I met her. She's actually she graduated from Dassel Cokato in 86. So she's 2 years older than me, but she is delightful. And we met at the first church that I went to. And so she's my Minnesota sweetheart. I moved her out to Colorado, and she's crazy enough to follow me wherever I go. So, but we have 2 kids. I have a daughter who's going to be a senior, and I have a son who's going to be a sophomore in high school. And so they're just active. Let's see, I have 3 cats. I'm a cat guy.
Yeah.
Some days I'm ashamed to admit it. I don't know what it is, but today it's like, if you're a cat guy, it's just weird, but I love cats.
Brad,
Yeah.
I have 4 cats.
That's awesome. I'm trying to get my wife to give me one more, but she won't do it.
I'll send you one of mine. We can talk later.
And I'm the president of the Cat Annihilators Society of America. I'm dreadfully allergic to cats, so I stay away from all things kitty in my life.
So Mike, when was the last time you talked to these guys?
High school, probably towards the end of it. Was it when we left the traffic signal in your bedroom? Was that after high school?
Was that you and Dave Graves?
I think it was me, Graves, and probably Kavalseth.
Yeah, probably. I remember that. I came home and there's that blinking light in my bedroom. And the crazy thing, Mike, is we sold that. My mom moved out. My brother and I lived in that house for I think 2 years after she moved out, which is kind of crazy because it was a huge house and we never had a single party at it. But when I moved out, we were moving everything out, and there was that signal light still in my basement.
I thought the cops came and stuff. No?
I don't remember that, but maybe they did. Probably Officer, what's his name? Like Officer Oopens, or
yeah, or
he seemed
maybe he was just feeding me a line.
I don't remember.
I have not seen Mike since I was 16, probably. So it's 35 years, bro.
Yeah.
Mike, what's
we
your current location?
Me? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
in Guadalajara.
Okay.
You
Hey,
didn't
Mike?
go back to Colombia?
Yeah, I was 3 years in Colombia. Then I had enough and I went to Guadalajara.
Okay.
Mike, I said that I've never had to sleep with a machete near my bed. So my life already is not nearly as exciting as yours.
Yeah, Colombia was a little too exciting. I did actually have a machete I had to scare some homeless people away with,
Oh man.
pounding in my garage.
And so tell us more about the stoplight. I missed that inside joke.
Oh no, that it was literally kind of like a sawhorse with flashing lights on it, and and it was just sitting there, and there wasn't anything. The problem with the road had been fixed, so Gavalseth and I put it in his car, and we went. And Brad's brother led us into his house, and we put it in his bedroom while he was sleeping.
Oh. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
It was bright too. I don't know how he'd slept through it.
They're bright. Yeah. They're meant to stop traffic, I suppose. It's not. Mike, were you
awesome.
part of this D&D crowd?
Yeah, I played some Dungeons and Dragons with the Golden Valley crew. I don't know if we played. I don't think I ever played with these guys.
Okay.
Who'd you play with, Mike?
There it was Kavalseth, Drone, and Craig were all there. We would go to Eric's cabin on the weekends, and then we got really angry once and threw a bunch of dice around, and we broke all the glass windows, so I had to pay for them.
Man, he's
Ow.
took an ugly turn.
Really?
So the part, so, okay, a couple of, just behind the curtain here for our viewers, Carl's the first guest on KHOP88 to send us a media kit. I work in
A lot
media.
when I offered to send that to you, Brad goes, you won't be getting a media kit from me.
Right.
You know.
I work in media, and usually the first thing I do with media kits is, shift delete. But I read through yours.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Me too. Thank you.
yeah, and you use a term throughout that I'm interested in what it means, and it's I think it's media ministry.
Media missionary.
Media missionary.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain that.
Absolutely. So again, if you're not a follower of Jesus and you just think I'm totally weird talking about these things, that's okay. I don't mind. I get it all the time. But I'll tell you exactly what happened to me. I was in a prayer time with my wife, Sarah, back now, just to rewind a little bit, 7 years ago, I got a very serious form of cancer. It's melanoma stage 3B. So it landed in my upper leg, right groin, kind of this area of my body, and spread into those lymph nodes and became very, very deadly for me personally. My prognosis was not very good at the time. And, your world sort of falls out from under your feet in those moments. We had a super successful wedding video business at the time. But once I got sick, that started to decline. We had to let go of all of our employees, and it was a very difficult time for me. But my faith was strong in the Lord. I mean, I just knew that I knew his presence, that every time I prayed, he was right there with me. And we saw the video business dropping. And so we're kind of wondering, well, A, how are we going to live? How are we going to pay the house payment? But B, more importantly, what is the Lord potentially calling me to do, or us to do as a couple? So we're in prayer one day, and while we're waiting on the Lord, asking him that question, he said to me, and when I say he said to me, I can tell you, the Lord and I speak like you and I are speaking right now. We talk all the time. It's very, very supernaturally natural to talk to the Lord and to listen to him and talk back. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And he said to me, well, what do you want to do? So he answered my question with a question. So I'm sitting there in prayer thinking, what do I want to do? Okay. And while I'm thinking that, Sarah is getting a word from the book of Exodus, chapter 4, where Moses was about to go into his calling, and he was a little apprehensive. And as you might know the story, the Lord said to him, "What's that in your hand?" And for him, it was a staff, and that was the symbol of God's presence with Moses. So Sarah turns to me and says, "Honey, we're supposed to look at our hands. And as we do so, the Lord's going to show us something." So I'm sitting in prayer, staring at my hands like this. And in this hand, I had my Bible, this very Bible right here. I was holding it, and I was staring at it. And the Lord said, "Yep, you're gonna keep preaching and teaching my word." But in this hand, I saw a really nice film camera appear just out of nowhere. I'm staring in a vision at an actual film camera in my hand. And as I'm staring at this film camera, I'm trying to listen to God, and God says to me, "I've called you now as a media missionary." I thought, wow, that's a cool term. I wonder what that means. So I wrote that down, media missionary. I had heard the term maybe once from a group called Youth with a Mission. They were doing some stuff with like Christian broadcasting and stuff, but I didn't know what it meant. So as I prayed about that, I felt like the Lord impress upon me that my particular calling as a media missionary would be simply to how do I put this, to let go of my wedding video business, because I no longer had strength to even operate it, but to let that go kind of by faith and to embrace this new calling and to create media, in my case, documentary films that are very compelling to watch, that bring forth some of the stories of the past Christians that have done marvelous things, and points in history where the Lord has shown up in people's lives and made himself real to them. And my calling was to retell those great stories and then combine them with current modern leaders and create really compelling television. So what had happened is I was in the middle of writing a book at the time. Again, I'm suffering through cancer. I'm battling every week. My particular form of melanoma, I had to take a drug called interferon, which is very, very difficult to take. If you know that drug, I had to give myself a shot in the stomach every Monday night, and it would give you a fever, because the idea with melanoma cancer is that my body was missing something and it didn't recognize the cancer as a threat, if that makes sense. So therefore, we had to heighten my immune system to kill the cancer. So that means you get a fever. So I give myself a shot, and I got a fever on the Tuesday morning. Usually the fever went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then Sunday, you're exhausted, and Monday, you give yourself the shot again. And I went through 69 weeks of that. So, you can imagine this incredible, suffering that I was going through to try to get this cancer healed, or, at least under control. And so I wrote this book, though, because I was praying all the time, and I felt I could hear the voice of God so clearly. And I think that, for a Christian, it's really encouraging that we have a relationship with a living God that actually hears our prayers and answers them. So I wrote this book. It's called Love Speaks. If I can just hold it up quick, there it is. That's the book, Love Speaks. Little shameless self-promotion there. 21 ways to recognize God's multifaceted voice. And it's literally just 21 chapters. Very simple book to read, 21 ways. Well, then I went to London because I started to get better from cancer, and I'm pursuing this media missions call, and God says to me, "I want you to make a film, a documentary film based on each way that's in your book." So he said, start with the first 7. And just to let you know what they are the Bible, the Bible, great way to hear God's voice. Then you have the living word, which is when the word comes alive. Then you have the inner witness of the Holy Spirit, the inner voice of the Holy Spirit, the desires of the heart, nature, creation, and then providence, 7 different ways. So I went all over the UK. I raised some money. We created a TV series. It ended up getting on the air on a network called TBN, which, if you're not a Christian or familiar with it, it's the world's largest Christian platform for media. So we've been very honored to be on there. And right now, every Monday night, if you're interested, you can just do a Google search, Love Speaks on TBN, and we're on live every Monday to about 100 million people around the world. So that's where that all came from.
Wow.
Yeah, that really is missionary work. That's TVN is everywhere, right? The satellites all over the world. It's an incredible operation, I'm sure. Brad, watching this as you are from Shipsburg, can you believe what your buddy is up to these days?
Oh, it's very cool. I've been able to watch it along the journey. I spoke a little bit into the development of his book, and
Yes.
it's awesome seeing what he's doing. I think it's great.
Yeah, I contacted Brad right off the bat when I was writing it, and he gave me some very awesome counsel from a publisher's perspective. And so even to the title, the subtitle, and then amazingly, Brad was back in Minnesota for a little visit. So I happened to be making a film on the life of
Right.
a prayer warrior guy out in Los Angeles. And I'm like, I need a good voice for this. Brad, you've got a great voice. Could you just record this with me? He's like, sure, I'll do it. So we sat in my van. It was like December or something. We had to turn the heat off because it was too loud. And we recorded this. He recorded this voice of this guy in history, and he is in the series. So Brad, your voice has gone out to 100 million people around the world.
That's so cool.
That's funny.
Speaking of books, I need to ask Mike, how's your book coming along, the publishing part?
I've been doing kind of the animation for the marketing of it since we last talked. It is moving forward. I got a whole intense round of edits to review, and I'm looking for a new layout person, but that's about what I have so far for the latest progress report.
Okay, and wait, you had a phrase for your book, forgive my 50-year-old memory. What did you call it? Multimedia. What was your phrase for the format of your book?
Oh, transmedia.
Transmedia, that's what we're talking about, right? Thanks.
So I have 2 animated shorts and the book itself, with then the audio and ebook and all the stuff.
That's awesome.
So Mike, do you have any questions for these guys?
I was just trying to think why I haven't talked to Carl in so long. I didn't remember there being any animosity there. It's just like we just parted ways all of a sudden.
I totally agree. We got to get back in touch. So at the end of this call, we'll trade numbers and whatever we can do to get back in touch.
Yeah, well, I'm interested in the media aspect too. That was kind of I was looking at starting my own streaming channel about 3 years ago. I got my Sony camera and I've got a little stop motion setup I've been playing with here. But yeah, so what's up with Reed, Brad? I keep thinking about him too, because he was dating that one girl we all wanted to date. I can't remember her name either.
I can't remember her name either. I don't know who you're talking about.
To whom are you referring, Mike?
Oh, I think I do know who you're. Sarah Dahl. Was that who you're talking about?
Yep. Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
the good news about, well, I don't want to say anything negative. I'll just leave it at that.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I couldn't get a date as a junior at Hopkins. I asked multiple girls to go to prom or whatever, and I got axed by everybody, so I didn't go.
You aren't the only one.
What's that?
Oh, you're not the only one who didn't.
Yeah,
go.
you're not the only one, Carl. That's
All
for
right.
sure.
So I shouldn't I didn't form my own club of rejection over that.
No.
Thank God. Yeah, that's good. I wanted to get back, Brad, you were talking about working at Schindler's, and
Yeah.
so the one over by Ridgedale. Is
Yeah.
It's, Schindler's was such a great place, and I was just recalling there was a place here in Madison that was very similar, a newsstand kind of place. And it's different things to different people, right? Like you could be a baseball card collector, comic book collector. I used to like to go there just because they had, magazines you couldn't really find anywhere else. Like you could get the New Yorker there, or you could get the Village Voice there. I remember when you couldn't really get it anywhere else. How long did you work there? And do you have any crazy Schindler's stories?
Man, that's a great question.
We've just gotten into this area of jobs recently, high school jobs, and people have had fascinating jobs.
I can't think of anything interesting that happened. I mean, I can think of some things I saw happen downtown at the 7th Street Schindler's.
The original, yeah.
Yeah, the original. I remember Ron Lasner, he was one of the VPs, was a Tai Chi guy, and he and a homeless guy decided he was going to go to the bathroom in the store, and he removed him from the store. That was pretty interesting. But I worked there for about 3.5 years, and I worked with let's see, Dan Shear, and Yeah, some great people. They were all, I mean, all of them were, you know, either a couple grades above us but I work with some great people there, and I mean, I can't think of anything else that was that interesting. I mean, it was a great place to work, and it was, I mean, it felt when I watched, like, if you ever watch Pawn Stars,
Yeah.
you know, it kind of had that Pawn Star feel to it. People will bring stuff in and try to sell it, whether it was sports cards or comics or memorabilia or whatever, you know, and we look at it and evaluate it and lowball them. And
Didn't you date Cinderella once? Was Joel Schinder's daughter. They called her Cinderella.
that was not me, but you know,
Maybe it's your brother again. I don't.
No, it wasn't my brother. I'm pretty sure it wasn't my brother, but it's, you know, it's interesting seeing what happened. I mean, I don't even know if I'm heading up to Minneapolis on Friday. I haven't been up there in 2 years, but I'm flying up on Friday to see my mom, and I thought I'd stop by. I know in Ridgedale, the guys who bought it out of whatever bankruptcy or whatever, you know, they called it Beyond Shinders is the name they gave it, because they couldn't use Shinders as a, I mean, so they could call it Beyond Shinders, but they couldn't call it Shinders something else, you know. And so I don't even know if it's still going.
I mean, you talk about, like, the internet has disrupted obviously just about every aspect of life, and obviously including media, but those newsstands are just not, you know, like, why would you ever go to a newsstand to buy something that you can just Google?
You know what? There's still I mean, the newsstands still exist, and I still think it was viable. It was that, you know, Joel Schinders sold it to his nephew, and I think his nephew was a lawyer and I think like a crack addict or something else, and he wasn't paying. They weren't paying their taxes, and you don't pay your taxes, they come shut you down.
Yeah, right.
You know. So.
So we've got a couple questions that we ask pretty much everyone who comes on, and one of them is, and Carl maybe answered this already, but was there a teacher at Hopkins or even in junior high or elementary school in the district who you remember who had a great impression on you, and maybe that you still think about today? Brad, I'll let you go first.
Well, for me, you know, I was in special ed, and so there was a lady named Elaine Ballard, who was a sweet lady that, you know, believed in me and took me under her wing. And I think she passed away in like 2008. But she was, you know, very impactful on my life. Gene Kremen, you know, it's so funny because, you know, I hardly read any books in high school. I couldn't even keep up because I read so slow. I'd listen to a lot of audio. And, but Gene Kremen, I think, sobered me up to certain things in life. You know, when he would talk about serving in Vietnam and the different things, you know, he had a way of kind of making you reevaluate what you were seeing and what you'd experienced. So those are the two.
Interesting. That, you know, they've learned, the world has learned so much about dyslexia from when we were in high school to now. I know that there were at least a couple of kids that I knew in high school who had undiagnosed dyslexia to one degree or another. Do you think, I mean, did they handle it okay at Hopkins? Did you feel misunderstood at the time? Or?
Yeah, you know, you definitely felt misunderstood. You know, they'd kind of put you in a room, and you know, there might be a partition or something, but there'd be other kids on the other side that were much more developmentally challenged.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so that made you feel even, you know, like, am I that developmentally challenged? So it was, I mean, I'll just be honest, it was a hard time for me, and I had a pretty negative outlook at that time in my life, and so, you know, I don't blame them. I think they were doing the best they could. You know, as a school.
It's my teen has dyslexia, and I just am so grateful for all of the science and research and educators who like diagnose, and we talk about it, and it's just such a different time now. So I can only imagine how challenging it might have been.
Well, you know, it's interesting from that perspective. You know, like I have a brother who's 16 years older than me, and he's been retired for 20 years. He's a multimillionaire, and he had dyslexia. And my dad, you know, they didn't really have back then even an inkling of what dyslexia was. And so my dad called him stupid most of the days because that's how they qualified him. But it drove him to success, you know. I'm like, maybe I should have been a little bit more, got a little bit more name calling, but
Well,
anyway.
I'm not going to remember. I'll send you. There's a documentary done by Robert Redford's son about dyslexia, and they interview all sorts of interesting people, like Richard Branson, for example, who talked about how his dyslexia. I don't know if he would say motivated him, but helped him in his billionaire status. But that's another show.
Yep.
Right. Carl, did you have anybody other than Dan in the cable TV studio?
I think Dan was the man for me, especially with KHOP, as I shared earlier in the broadcast. The only other, I mean, of course, I remember various folks, but I don't know if you have to go to North Junior High to remember Willie Lauder. He was an English teacher.
He was a
Mr.
great
Lauder,
teacher.
Willie, he just became a mentor too, and I just remember his liveliness and the way he taught English made me love English. And I had a difficult time in math and science. Just maybe I'm not wired for that in my brain, but English and then communications became my love. And so Shakespeare, I can recite Shakespeare for you all this now because Willie originally recited Shakespeare in class, and we went. I was in the bowling league, I was that geeky guy. Video camera and bowling were about all I did. So Willie was the bowling league guy, and we went bowling every week and this and that. But yeah, I think Dan Ekberg, I don't know if anybody out there knows whatever happened to Dan, but I was in touch with his son for a while, and I cannot think of a greater mentor in my life than him. And I can just remember him taking time with, when someone takes time with you, I remember his desk was stacked full of papers and books and, wild stuff. He's going through all this and that, but he would just turn his chair and look at you and just, so let's talk about that. And we would talk about things. And again, some of the things that he taught me about video, I'm using to this day. Like today I was editing a film. It's a 1-hour film. I'm doing a whole Love Speak series. So I'm working on 7 more films right now, even in COVID.
Wow.
And I finished the last one today, literally right before this broadcast. I was tweaking it, getting it ready. And some of the things in that film, I can date back to a conversation with Dan Ekberg. So that's, if anything else, I just want to say, if anybody can ever get word to his family or whatever, but he was just such a wonderful support and influence in my life.
So two thoughts on that. Was television production or video production, was that like a 4-credit class, or was it all clubs and extracurriculars?
As I recall, it might have been a little bit of both, but
okay.
Definitely what Dan Ekberg led for my grade for junior was extracurricular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It just strikes me that, and we've revisited this a lot when we talk about teachers and opportunities that we got at Hopkins, that one of the great benefits among a whole list of privileges that we've come into contact with through doing this show, we went to school at a time when public education was really not just adequately funded, very well funded, especially in a district like Hopkins. And I just think that, in times of budget cuts, people would look at the cable TV studio would have a big old target on it for budget cutters and say, what are we doing here? They're not teaching a class there. And I think, these are the things that people, the arts, music, arts, extracurriculars that, that many people seized on and, tell a story just much like you. Those are the things that stick with them over 30 years later. It's amazing to me how, the perspective on public education and how we fund it has really changed since we graduated from high school. And it's too bad in many respects. I don't know if you have, that's my political commentary for the night. I don't know if any of you have.
Well, I think that public education has changed, but I also want to sadly know that our time is coming to an end, men and people. So we should see if there's any last stories. The three.
Oh, I got one.
Please, even if you get one more story to share, and then we'll have to wrap it up. Sadly.
All right, I'm gonna tell us, and then I tell us fast because this has Mike involved in it.
Uh-oh.
So
Please.
we were in I think it was a DECA class, if that's the right. I can't remember if that's the right name for it, but it was a DECA class. Can't remember who the teacher was. they said, the teacher said, hey, my partner was Dave Graves. And they said, you need to do a speech and write a paper about something that appeared in the Wall Street Journal between this date and this date. And it was over that period of time when the stock market collapsed, you know, the Black Friday. So like 90% of the students talked about Black Friday. Well, Dave Graves and I are looking through the newspaper, and Dave finds an article in the Wall Street Journal about a wrestling priest in Mexico. And so that's what we did our speech on for this DECA class. And Dave Graves had his mom sew a mask that looked just like the wrestling priest. And we had Mike show up and wear the mask during our speech. And it was the funniest thing because, you know, they're asking Mike questions, and all Mike says is C. And then they ask a question and the answer was no. And I don't know if you didn't know the word for no in Spanish or what, but you just shook your head. Oh, that was classic, Mike. That was such an awesome time. Anyway.
You're talking about like a La Luchador,
it was,
Mexican wrestling mask?
Yeah, it was a full mask, man. It was hilarious.
And maybe that's when my obsession with it started now. I'm going to the arena next week.
Wow, there we go.
We will have to have you back on to talk about that.
Yes.
You guys, thank you so much for joining us. This was really fun to catch up with you.
They each get one. They each get one. If Carl and Mike have one more thing they want to share.
Right. Yes, of course.
Thank you. Sorry.
I'll give one quick memory for you. I did this contest that Care 11 sponsored called this Orange Juice National Contest. And so I created this music video called Stand By C, like vitamin C. But it was the song, you know, lyric Stand By Me. And I had a senior named Brock Heinrich. You remember Brock Heinrich?
Yep.
He sang the title track, and then Doria Ransom. If you remember a gal named Doria, she helped me, and then John Babcock, I think. And we did this music video thing, and it won like third place in national award for this vitamin C deal. So Care 11 came over to the studio and interviewed me, and they played my little ridiculous music video on the air, which was, you know, for a 16-year-old, that's kind of fun. So that's one
super stardom. Yeah.
It was like, it was a start, right? You got to start somewhere. So we started at the bottom with that, but it was a great time. And the only other memory I wanted to share was some guy dressed up like a monkey or an ape and handed out bananas. Do you remember that? Does anybody remember this guy? No?
That's not ringing a bell, no.
Oh, he had an ape suit on, and he was handing out bananas. He was a fundamentalist Christian, and I didn't know anything about Christianity or anything about it, but I just thought this guy is really out there. But after I became a Christian, I looked back and I thought, that guy was actually being kind of cool. He was like letting people know, you know, evolution is not the only answer. There's a creation story too. So I don't know if any of you remember that, but that was a funny day at Hopkins High.
Interesting. That's an interesting memory. Any last thing you want to share with us, Mike?
No, I'll yield the floor to your stars this evening, but
okay,
I'll save it for a future date.
Please.
Well, thanks for checking in from Guadalajara, and thanks to you, Brad and Carl, for joining us. And
Nada.
Marnie, stay out of the fire out there. Good Lord, it's one natural disaster after another with you.
Yep, we'll keep it safe, and we'll save next week's guest for the internet because I don't have all my windows open.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Suspense.
It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for sharing your lives with us. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.